Hello, Shabbat Shalom. I hope everyone is ready for a relaxing and restful and invigorating Shabbat. The date, the Hebrew date of this Shabbat is the 5th of IYYAR, which actually is the date of Israel's independence. The celebrations are moved up, are advanced because of concerns of violating the Shabbat, and so we celebrated on Thursday. But this Shabbat is a day of continuing the celebrations and talking about the significance of Israel in our lives. And I'd like to speak about Israel and about baseball, because we're in the middle of baseball season. But I want to speak about what Israel means to us, Israel means to Jews, about the significance in my life and in the life of so many. In appreciating where Israel is, it's important, of course, to know where Israel has been. Let me read the following quote that anyone who attended the Toscanini concerts at Jerusalem might have imagined, if he closed his eyes, that he was in Paris, London, or New York. And it's the same with science. The Weizmann Institute, equipped with the most delicate modern instruments, the experiments conducted there are watched by scientists all over the world. And the question is, when was that written? Was that written this year, last year, talking about arts and culture and achievements? And of course, concerts wasn't this past year, but it was written in the last decade, was written in modern time. It was written in 1937. It's part of the Peel Commission report, which was trying to carve a path forward for how to deal with the British Mandate and how to settle that great question and that great challenge. And so the achievements of Israel, and Israel being a beacon of light, is certainly not a new reality, but our appreciation of it is renewed constantly, time and time again. And let me share a story with you that occurred in the early 1950s and involves the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The seventh Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson Zatzal, became Rebbe around that time in the early 1950s. And the story is told in Telushkin's book called Rebbe. It's recounted, as well as other places, that there was a man and his son, and they were walking in Brooklyn, in the Crown Heights neighborhood, on their way to Ebbets Field to watch the Brooklyn Dodgers play. And they came across the Rebbe, and the Rebbe stopped them and spoke to them and asked questions. Where are you going? Oh, we're going to the baseball game. And who are you going to see? What are you going to see? Oh, we're going to see this team and that team, and we're going to see the players. And the Rebbe said, well, let me ask you a question. What happens if one team scores a lot of points, a lot of runs, and it's not yet the end of the game? What happens if one team is winning by a whole lot? What do you do then? And the young boy looked at the Rebbe and said, actually, that's when a lot of people leave the game. You stop watching because it's clear who's going to win. It's clear what the outcome's going to be. And the Rebbe said, okay, but what do the players do? And the boy laughed and he said, of course, the players have to stay until the end of the game. And the Rebbe said, well, that's the essence. In life, one has to decide whether one is a spectator or a player. If one is a spectator, you can check in, you can check out whenever you want. The game isn't depending on you. But if one is a player, one has to stick it out to the end. One is invested in the game at every moment of the game. And that's, of course, a metaphor for Jewish life. And I would argue that that's a metaphor for the role of the state of Israel in our lives. Are we spectators or are we players? And as a Jewish community, the state of Israel is the one place in which we can play the game, in which the game depends on us and depends on our involvement in the destiny of the state, of those who are living there, insofar as it's the Jewish state. In other countries, we may have a voice, stronger or weaker, depending on what country and depending on the conditions of the time. But at the end of the day, the voice of the community is that of a special interest group, which represents its own needs. It's almost as a spectator. And in Israel, it's the one country in which we're given the opportunity to establish Jewish values and to live within a country that's formed based on the teachings of our tradition. And that's an extraordinary privilege that the vast majority of Jewish history and human history never had a chance to celebrate or experience. And so what a blessing it is to live at this moment in history and to appreciate what they said in 1937 in the Peel report, to appreciate the contributions of Israel to the world and to appreciate what it means to have a state of Israel. And that understanding inspires me on this 5th of IYYAR, on the day of celebrating Israel's independence, and should inspire us at each and every moment that we try to connect to the Jewish state and to the blessing of having a Jewish people in the Jewish homeland. Stay healthy and safe, everyone, and wishing you a relaxing, restful, invigorating, and spiritual Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. What a special week this has been in the Jewish calendar. It's the week of Yom Ha'Atzmaut, that we celebrate the 73rd anniversary of the founding of the modern state of Israel. Yom Ha'Atzmaut in Israel is a day like no other. Fireworks, barbecues, parties, spraying your neighbor with shaving cream as you walk down the street. It's one big party. And part of the celebration in Jerusalem every year is the annual Yom Ha'Atzmaut Chazanut concert at the Yeshurun synagogue right downtown. It's a special occasion at which cantors are invited from all over the world to share interpretations of the return to Zion and Jerusalem and the rebuilding of our Holy Land that are throughout our liturgy. I've had the honor to participate in this concert a number of times, and one of them was under the conducting baton of my mentor, Cantor Naftali Hirschtick, the Cantor Emeritus of the Jerusalem Great Synagogue. Yom Ha'Atzmaut is a day that we say Hallel, prayers of praise, as though it were a holiday. And this week, actually, we said it 3 times because we had 2 days of Rosh Chodesh as well. And Hallel closes out with the sentiments, Lo amut ki ehyeh, va'asaper ma'aseya. I will not die, I will live, to tell the glories of God. This is a performance that was from a number of years ago. The choir of the Tel Aviv Cantorial Institute, conducted by Naftali Hirschtick, Raymond Goldstein at the piano, and this is a beautiful composition by the great Germanic composer Spectator, made famous by Naftali Hirschtick when he was cantor at the Great Synagogue. To him, I express my undying love, because he, through the years that I studied with him in Jerusalem, implanted a little bit of that holy atmosphere of our holy city into me. As one of my colleagues always said about him, it didn't matter what was going on outside the Great Synagogue of Jerusalem, terrorism, political strife, but when Naftali walked up to the Amud, for the next few hours, you knew that everything was going to be all right. I hope that I'm able to bring a little bit of that to our tefillot at Shar HaShamayim. Enjoy this from Yom Ha'Atzmaut past. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Atzmaut Sameach.
Thank